Imagine a time when women were not allowed to attend university. Imagine a country that was erased from the map. Imagine a life so full of death. A lost mother, a lost husband, a body slowly poisoned by the very work that made you famous. Now imagine that same woman standing in a freezing cold shed, stirring a vat of boiling pitchblende with an iron rod, her hands blistered, her lungs burning, her eyes fixed on a tiny glowing speck of something that had never existed before. She named it radium, and she gave it to the world for free. This is not a story about a distant saint in a white coat. This is a story about a refugee who became a legend, a mother who won 2 Nobel Prizes, a woman whose papers are still too radioactive to handle, over 100 years later. Welcome to our channel. Today we are telling the story of Marie Curie, and by the end, you will understand that hope is not the absence of radiation. Hope is the light that shines even when your body is tired. Maria Sklodowska was born on November 7, 1867 in Warsaw, Poland. But on the map, Poland did not exist. It had been carved up by Russia, Prussia, and Austria. Warsaw was under brutal Russian control. Marie's father, the Ladislaw, was a physics teacher. Her mother, Bronislawa, was a headmistress. They were intellectuals. They were patriots. They were also deeply poor. Marie was the youngest of 5 brilliant children. She learned to read at age 4. She memorized poetry in Polish, Russian, French, German, and later English. But her childhood was haunted by tragedy. Her oldest sister, Sophia, died of typhus when Marie was only 9. Then just 2 years later, her mother died of tuberculosis. Marie was 11 years old. She watched her mother's coffin lowered into the frozen ground. She never spoke of it publicly. But years later, her daughter wrote that Marie never truly recovered. The loss carved something into her, a furious, silent determination. She would not let the world break her. At 15, Marie graduated from high school as the gold medalist, the best student in all of Russian-occupied Warsaw. But women could not attend university in Poland. The doors were locked. So Marie did something that defines her entire life. She refused to accept no. Marie joined a secret underground network called the Flying University. Polish intellectuals, risking arrest and exile, met in private apartments to teach banned subjects. Marie learned chemistry and physics in secret with Russian spies everywhere. But she needed a real degree. So she made a pact with her older sister, Bronia. Bronia wanted to study medicine in Paris. Marie would work as a governess, a live-in tutor, to pay for Bronia's tuition. Then once Bronia became a doctor, she would pay for Marie. For 5 years, Marie worked for wealthy families in the Polish countryside. She slept in cold attics. She was treated like a servant. She fell in love with the son of the family, a handsome young man named Kazimierz. He wanted to marry her. His parents refused. She was poor. She was just a governess. Kazimierz broke her heart. Marie wrote in her diary, "I have no hope. I have nothing." And then she got up. She packed her bag. In 1891, at age 24, she climbed onto a 4th-class train carriage with a mattress tied to the roof. She crossed the border into France. She had almost no money. She spoke broken French. She arrived in Paris at night, alone in the rain. She later wrote, "I was not afraid. I had already lost everything that could be lost. So I had everything to gain." That is hope, not the absence of fear, the refusal to let fear win. Marie enrolled at the Sorbonne, the University of Paris. She registered as Marie because Maria sounded too foreign. She threw herself into physics, chemistry, and mathematics. But she was starving. Her attic room had no heat, no running water, and no light except a single oil lamp. In winter, the water in her wash basin froze solid. She would pile all her clothes on her bed and lie there shivering, eating only bread and butter because she could not afford meat. Twice she fainted from hunger. The first time, a male student carried her to a pharmacy. The second time, her brother-in-law found her unconscious on the street. But she would not stop. In 1893, she finished first in her class, the top of the entire physics faculty. In 1894, she finished second in mathematics. That same year, a friend introduced her to a shy, brilliant physicist named Marie Curie. Pierre was 35, already famous for his work on crystals and magnetism. He had never married. He had vowed to devote his life entirely to science. Then he met Marie. He wrote to her, It would be a beautiful thing, the life we could share, devoting our existence to scientific research, dreaming together of the mysteries of nature. Marie hesitated. She planned to return to Poland. But Pierre told her, "Stay. Science needs you." They married on July 26, 1895. Marie wore a dark blue dress, the same dress she would wear in the laboratory for years. No white gown, no diamonds, just two scientists, two bicycles, and a promise to explore the invisible. In 1896, a scientist named Henri Becquerel discovered that uranium salts emitted mysterious rays. He didn't understand them. Nobody did. Marie decided to study these rays for her PhD thesis. She chose a topic so new that no textbook existed. She had to invent the experiments herself. She discovered something shocking. The rays did not depend on the chemical structure of the sample. They depended only on the presence of uranium atoms. She called this property radioactivity, a word she invented. Then she tested a mineral called pitchblende. It was 4 times more radioactive than uranium itself. That meant something else, something unknown, was hiding inside. Marie told Pierre, there must be a new element. Possibly 2. Pierre dropped his own research. He joined her. They had no proper laboratory. The university gave them an abandoned shed, once a medical school dissecting room. The floor was dirt. The roof leaked. The glass windows were broken and could not close. In summer, the heat was suffocating. In winter, their fingers froze to the metal instruments. Marie wrote later, "It was in this miserable old shed that the best and happiest years of our lives were spent. We were entirely absorbed by the work that filled us with joy." Think about that. She calls the moldering shed, the cold, the toxic fumes, the raw blisters on her hands, the best and happiest years. Why? Because she was doing what she loved, with the person she loved, for no reward except the truth. They processed ton after ton of pitchblende, a radioactive ore from the mountains of Bohemia. The Austrian government gave it to them for free because it was considered worthless after the uranium was extracted. Marie stirred the boiling sludge with an iron rod, her face streaked with sweat and black dust. In 1898, they announced the discovery of polonium, named after Marie's erased homeland. Then, months later, radium, from the Latin word for ray. To prove radium existed, they needed to isolate a pure sample, a visible speck. Took them 4 more years of brutal work. And when they finally held it in a dark room, the test tube glowed with a soft, eerie blue light. They had touched the invisible. They had pulled light from darkness. Part 5. The Crash of Thunder, 1903 to 1906. Visual: a rainy street in Paris. A horse-drawn carriage. A man lying in the mud. In 1903, Marie became the first woman in history to win a Nobel Prize. She shared it with Pierre and Becquerel for the discovery of radioactivity. But the French Academy of Sciences initially refused to nominate her. They wanted to give the prize only to Pierre and Becquerel. Pierre wrote a furious letter. "If the prize is awarded to me alone, I will not accept it." The work was done together. They relented. Marie won. But fame did not bring happiness. Journalists hounded them. Reporters called Marie Pierre's assistant, and the woman behind the great man. They photographed her eating, sleeping, and holding her baby daughter Irene. They asked her if she was the scientific wife. Marie ignored them. She went back to the shed. Then on April 19, 1906, Pierre walked to the Sorbonne through a rainstorm. He was distracted, deep in thought. He stepped off a curb. A heavy horse-drawn wagon carrying military uniforms came too fast. The driver couldn't stop. Pierre was knocked down. The wheel of the wagon crushed his skull. He died instantly. He was 47 years old. Marie received the news in her laboratory. She sat down. She turned to her notebook. She wrote one sentence: "Pierre is dead." Then she did not speak for hours. The French government offered Marie a national pension. She refused. She said, "I am not an invalid. I can work." The Sorbonne offered her Pierre's position as professor of physics. No woman had ever held that chair. Marie accepted. She walked into the lecture hall, bowed her head to the students, and began exactly where Pierre had stopped. Her voice did not break. But at night she wrote in her diary. She addressed Pierre as if he were still alive. "I, Pierre. They say I am strong. But I am only standing because you left me a task that is not finished. I will finish it for you." She finished his work. She isolated pure radium. He proved once and for all that radium was a new element. And in 1911 she won her second Nobel Prize, this time in chemistry. She remains the only person to win Nobel Prizes in 2 different sciences. But the French press turned on her. A scandal erupted. Marie had a friendship with a married physicist named Paul Langevin. The newspapers called her a homewrecker. They wrote, "The foreign woman has invaded our laboratories and now our bedrooms." A mob gathered outside her house. Marie collapsed. She spent months in a nursing home. The Nobel Committee suggested she not attend the ceremony. Marie wrote back, "The prize was awarded for my work, not for my private life. I will come." She came. She sat in the front row. She did not cry. When World War I broke out, Marie Curie did something extraordinary. She realized that X-rays could save soldiers' lives by finding bullets and shrapnel inside wounded bodies. But the French army had almost no X-ray equipment. Marie built her own. She learned to drive a car, lifted heavy equipment, and installed X-ray machines in vans. She trained 150 women to operate them. She drove her little Curies to the front lines under artillery fire, with her 17-year-old daughter Irene beside her. She once performed an X-ray in a tent while German shells exploded 500 meters away. The soldier on the table survived. By the end of the war, her X-ray vans had examined over 1 million soldiers. She never took a single franc for her work. But the radiation was eating her from the inside. She had spent decades handling radium with bare hands. She carried glowing test tubes in her pockets. She kept radium beside her bed like a nightlight. Nobody knew the dangers. Her fingers became scarred and cracked. Her eyes clouded with cataracts. Her bone marrow was dying. She was slowly, painfully becoming radioactive. Marie Curie died on July 4, 1934 at age 66. The official cause was aplastic anemia, radiation poisoning. Her doctors said her bone marrow had simply stopped working. Her daughter Irene later said, "She was tired. She had been tired for 30 years." In 1995, Marie's remains were moved to the Pantheon, the resting place of France's greatest heroes. She was the first woman honored there for her own achievements. Her coffin was lined with lead because her body still emits radiation. Her notebooks from the 1890s are still too dangerous to handle. They are kept in lead-lined boxes. You must sign a radiation waiver to see them. But here is the hope that burns through all of this darkness. Marie Curie could have patented radium. He could have become a billionaire. Every hospital, every factory, every scientist who used radium would have paid her. She refused. She said, "Radium is an element. It belongs to all people. No scientist should own the building blocks of nature." She gave away the secrets of radioactivity for free. She gave us the ability to treat cancer, radiation therapy, without asking for a penny. To our audience in the USA, the UK, and Canada, you are watching this video in a world where success is measured in dollars, followers, and titles. Marie Curie had none of those things when it mattered most. She was a refugee, a widow, a woman in a man's world. She was mocked, scandalized, and slowly poisoned by her own brilliance. And yet she glowed. Not just her radium, her spirit. If you have lost a parent, if you have lost a spouse, if you have been told you cannot because of your gender, your accent, your poverty, or your past, remember the woman in the freezing shed. Remember the widow in black who drove an ambulance into gunfire. Remember the scientist who held a glowing tube in her bare hands and called it the happiest years. You do not need to be safe to be brilliant. You do not need to be comfortable to change the world. You just need to refuse to stop. If Marie Curie's story made your chest tighten with hope, hit that like button for every woman in science who was told no. Subscribe for more stories of impossible humans who did not wait for permission. And in the comments below, what is one thing you would keep glowing for, even if it hurt? Thank you for watching. Keep glowing. Fade to black. A soft blue light like radium in the dark. Silence. Then a heartbeat. Nothing in life is to be feared. It is only to be understood. Marie Curie.